Shalom Mishpachah. Thank you so much for your patience. And as I've promised, I have the breakdown and my thought processes that will go deeper into explaining the end time orders of events videos that I posted around October 11th of 2017. So again, I am sorry it took so long. I promise you it was not being lazy. It's just everything is such a long and engaging process on top of so many other things that have to go on in life. So again, I apologize, but as I promised, I am here with the videos. And this will be a series of videos that will be posted back to back, so no more waiting on this series of videos. But once I'm done with this series of videos, I actually will have other videos that are going to address some highlights about events that are going to transpire in the last days. And these highlights that I'm going to address will give more insight, as I've stated before in a previous video. So I don't want to waste any more of your time. We're going to go ahead and get started going through the 56-page document that has pretty much the order of events for the last days and the scriptures, and we're going to go through and break it down and give you, hopefully this will address any questions that you may have on what brought me to this and how this came to be. So all right, no more. I will waste no more of your time. Thank you so much again for your patience, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to start on pages 1 and 2, and what we're starting with is a summary. The reason we start with a summary, which is this is going to be a summary of the start of the end, and it starts with this because it's Yahshua himself that gives us the beginning of the end. So what better place to start with than out the mouth of Yahshua himself? Because remember that it was the disciples that came to him and they privately asked him, right? Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming? His coming, right? So this is clearly about the end times, not about 70 AD. And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? The end of the world. So again, this is important to pay attention to. This is how we know that these events are still to come. They have not happened yet. Prophecy, it recycles itself. So we can't say that this has already happened and that it's not going to happen again. Yes, I understand about 70 AD happening, but these verses make it very concrete that this is about the coming of Yahshua HaMashiach, because he was already with them. So they're not going to ask, when are you coming, when he's already there. They're talking about his second coming to deliver them. And it's about clearly the end of the world. And his response to them was pretty much giving a detailed order of events. So this is how we know the seals go first. So it was Yahshua himself that established this order. He gives us a place to start, a marker. Like I stated before, it was Yahshua himself that starts us off with the order of events. He establishes the markers for where the beginning of the end starts. Now notice that before even being asked about the end, he tells them about the temple. This is a marker. This is the answer to the question that a lot of skeptics have a habit of asking. They'll ask, what makes this time different from any other time in history? Does that question sound familiar to you? That's a question that's frequently asked in response to people, mainly Christian people, who evangelize the world and tell people we are living in the last days. That's a really good question. It's a valid question, right? Because the Christian oftentimes, and I'm speaking from experience, this isn't anything bad against Christian people. What makes this time any different from any other time in history? How do you know that this is the end? I mean, at best, a lot of Christians will say, well, things have gotten worse, but that still doesn't really answer their question. The answer to the question is the third temple. It's not enough to just have wars and rumors of wars, because that has always been. It's not enough to have a decaying society. That has been around too since the time of Noah and Lot. All of the conditions must be right. You must have it all. Wars and rumors of war. An immoral society, diverse weather patterns, earthquakes, and most of all, the third temple must be in place when these things are happening. That's the marker. That's what sets this time in history apart from any other time in history. It's Israel's third temple. Pivotal markers in Israel's history really is their temple. This is why the world actually centers around Israel. And, we can go further back and actually start with the tabernacle, right? Then the first temple and the second temple. Then things leave off with them all going into captivity. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the temples and even the tabernacle, they seem to emerge when they come out of captivity in most cases. First, there was the tabernacle that came to be after being delivered from their 400-year captivity. Next, there was the first temple, King Solomon's temple. They go into captivity, the temple is destroyed, but later, some of the Israelites are released from captivity to build the second temple. That too is later destroyed and people are put in captivity. Now, there is one last temple that will be built before the 1,000-year reign. This is critical because not just anyone can build that temple. It must be built by the true Israelite people. It must be run and operated by the true people, and not just any Israelite, but by the tribe of Levi, more specifically by the Levitical priesthood. And honestly, if you ask me, this appears to be the motivation and the reason behind all of these DNA tests. They're searching for the true Levitical priest. This is why the real reason that temple hasn't been built yet is because they don't have the right people to do it. So when they tell you that they haven't built the temple because they're not sure where the true site is or because the Dome of the Rock is in its location, I get the impression that they're lying and they're stalling to buy time while keeping everybody's attention in that area. The real reason they haven't built that temple is because it can only be built by the true Israelite people. Now, unless I've missed something in scripture, I've never read anything about Gentiles building the Israelite temple. And the thing is that they know where the Israelite people are. They've always known, most of them. Only they need to pinpoint the correct Levites to operate the temple, hence the need for DNA testing. I don't know how they're able to figure what out, but there must be something that they probably know that they haven't told us. And keep in mind, what they have told you, though, is that they have everything they need to build the temple. I recall, looking into the whole Temple Institute, and to my understanding, they're recreating almost everything. So it looks like they're kind of supposedly their claim to why the temple hasn't been rebuilt, like I stated, is because of the Dome of the Rock issue, the location, blah, blah, blah. That's just stalling. They've basically stated that they have everything they need to build the temple, so why don't they just go ahead and do it? And it's because they can't, because they aren't the true people. To keep the world from seeing the obvious, they tell people that the Muslims are the reason they can't build the temple. That's a lie. The reason they can't build that temple is because they need the true bloodline to do it. And you can't just get a so-called African people, you can't get so-called black people who don't know who they are to just build a temple that they know nothing about. See, this is why this temple appears to be satanically inspired. And Satan knows that certain things aren't supposed to happen until a certain time. So it's Satan too who needs the Israelite people to wake up. That's why they haven't shut Israelite gatherings down yet. All throughout history, they've always shut down powerful black functions. But yet, they haven't really moved in on Israelites right now. Why is that? It's because they need you to know who you are so that you are functioning as they need you to. They can't take the Levites or conspire with Israelites who don't know who they are. They need us. They need us. They know we are here waking up people, but yet they haven't stopped us. Why is that? That's because they need us. In time, they'll decide to stop us when they choose. Okay, so we're going to continue to page 3 and 4, which may still kind of reincorporate the summary, which is on page 1 and 2, but pages 3 and 4 kind of have broken it down a little bit more specific. Pages 1 and 2 were just to let you know where that information was coming from. So after Yahshua addresses the temple, then the disciples ask when the end will be. Yahshua says in Matthew, Mark, and Luke that there will be wars and rumors of wars, deception, famine, etc. Then he says these things must happen first, but the end is not yet. Meaning before the end happens, there must first come a time of great distress, earthquakes, famines, wars, etc. Again, this period of time is still marked by the third temple. That's what sets this period of time apart from any other time. But even though these things must happen first before the end comes, something else happens before that. Luke 21 verse 12 says, before all of these things, you have to ask yourself, what things? The things he just mentioned, the earthquakes, wars, rumors of wars, famines. Before these things, Israel must be persecuted. These are the start of Israel's birth pains. It says, they will lay hands on Israel, persecute Israel, deliver them up to synagogues and prisons. Israel will be brought before kings and rulers for Yahshua's namesake. So like I stated, they haven't moved in on Israelites right now. As we can see, things are intensifying racially in the nation and around the world. And the reason for that is the time of Jacob's trouble. This is where we're headed in this period of time. So again, this is another time marker. Because as stated earlier, we've always had wars and rumors of wars. And Israel has been persecuted for a long time. But now, it all happens around the time of the third temple, which, like I said, they're already on edge. They have everything ready for that temple to be built except the people. So the third temple marks a sign of the end. That's what makes this persecution stand out from all of Israel's other persecutions all throughout history. The timing of the persecution is also a marker. So here's something else to take note of. Look at what's happening to the nation of Israel. For one, they will lay hands on you, is what Yahshua says. This is very specific. They will lay hands on you. 2, they will persecute you. 3, they will bring you to synagogues. Now this one concerning synagogues was very interesting to me for a number of reasons. One reason was because they are delivering Israel up to synagogues. Clearly that means Israel is not going of their own free will. Instead, Israel is being forced to go to synagogues. In the beginning, I really didn't understand why. And considering the fact that I really don't know any so-called black people that really owns any synagogues, it gives the impression that Israel is being brought before what we call the fake Jews, the Jewish people, Ashkenazis, and every other little, group in between. But they're being brought before those who call themselves Jews, right? Because they're the ones with synagogues. Which also, if these were Israel's synagogues, why are they being forced to go to those synagogues? You don't force someone to go to something that is theirs. So that stood out to me. And these are the same synagogues with the same Jews who put Israel into captivity to begin with. They're the ones that had their hand in the transatlantic slave trade. Now here's a question. Why are Israelites being brought to synagogues? Is it to help them build the third temple? Is it to punish the true children of Israel for exposing the worldwide Jewish lie? Is it because the Israelite people are testifying of who the true Yahudim are? Because they're testifying of who Yahshua HaMashiach is, of who Yahuwah is. So how are they brought to the synagogues? That's another question. By train? By boat? In chains? It never said the Israelites went willingly. It said they put hands on them and delivered them up. That's something to keep in mind and to think about and ask yourself. More questions. How do they get these so-called black people in such a position to deliver them up? How do you gather a so-called black people to bring them before rulers and kings and synagogues and so on and so forth? The conditions would have to be right. They would have to have the odds put in their favor to get them in their possession, to bring them to where they want to bring them. Laws would have to be in place. They may have to have already practiced delivering up other groups of people first through systems like, maybe immigration. Something that they can do trial runs and tests and run scenarios and just get the bugs worked out so that they can see what scenarios they may run into so that they can counter them. They may need to build barriers such as maybe a wall to keep people from getting out. And then they might need to destroy coastal lines with weapons like weather, and maybe even consider offering up a solution to help people through certain types of emergency camps. Camps are really great at helping people in times of disaster. And they may need some type of prison reform laws to help release prisoners or free up space to make room for Israelites that need to be delivered up as specified in Scripture. Just things to think about. But continuing with Israel's persecution, I also wondered why the Israelites were being brought to synagogues in the last days, but yet when Yahshua returns, he judges a lot of the Arab nations. It didn't make sense to me until I realized something. If we look back at Luke 21, around verses 10 through 19, right? If you keep reading in these verses, just keep reading down, you're going to get down to verse 17 where it says, "You will be hated of all nations." In the end times, Israel will be hated of all nations, meaning they are all in this together. Every nation has a hand in the abuse of Israel in some way, from the Jews to the Arabs to everyone in between. This is the beginning of Israel's judgment and refinement process. This begins their birth pains. Judgment must begin with Israel first. So when we see these things happening to Israel, then we'll also see something else happen. We're going to see the great falling away, deception, lies, and betrayal, which is also detailed in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to pages 4 through 5. Now, there is a silver lining in some of this darkness for this dark period of time in the lives of Israel. So even in the midst of all of Israel's pain and suffering, there is still a silver lining. Joel chapter 2, verses 28 through 32, and Acts chapter 2, verses 17 through 21 tell us that in the last days, Israel will have dreams and prophecies, which something else I want to address. I know that I've made mention about, a lot of the information and the revelation understanding I obtain is through Scripture. And I say that so you don't feel like, this is a dream I had, or, I don't want you to think that I'm just making stuff up. Everything that I provide is from Scripture, and it's clear. It's not convoluted, twisted, or distorted. It's black and white, and I share it with you so you know where I'm coming from. And that's why I make that point to say that. But I don't want my words to be confused. I don't want to give the impression that I am saying that I don't believe that people have dreams and visions. I do believe that. And especially I know that it's going to be prevalent in the last days. But I do point out the fact that a lot of my understanding, or all of my understanding, comes from a biblical place. I do that because the truth is a lot of people will lie to you. A lot of people claim they have these dreams and this revelation, and you want to be careful about most of those people. And I personally am coming just from a biblical place. I will not speak on anybody else, but just keep that in mind, that I'm not dismissing dreams or visions, because I truly believe that those are going to be prevalent in the last days. But I just strongly recommend staying well versed in scripture so that it helps you to hear the voice of Yahshua much more clearer, so that you're able to discern a lie from the truth. And it should all support scripture. It should support it, not go against it. Just be careful. To me, deception is big because, as we know in prophecy, it's going to get rampant. It's going to get worse. This is why I hold on to scripture just tight, because as the world gets darker, more and more people will be popping up with lies and lies. The only way you're going to be able to discern it is to have a strong foundation.